Yeah, my name's Lucy Bailey. I run a charity, set up a charity called Bounce Forward back in 2000. We've actually been working in this space for over 13 years, but we were originally incubated within a local authority, became an independent charity in 2016, and our work is all on supporting schools and parents to think about the science of resilience. And how that feeds into mental health, to mental ill health, how we can help our children respond to uncertainty. And my goodness, haven't we all just been in the middle of the biggest uncertainty, I think, that collectively we've ever had to face, hopefully in any of our lifetimes. But really thinking about what we mean by this thing called resilience. So my this next sort of 40 minutes is particularly focused on parents, particularly thinking about children and how we can think about supporting and developing them to build resilience, and how that links really to mental health and mental ill health. And I wanted to start by saying that family life is messy. Right, I have two now grown-up children, two boys, 3 years apart. I haven't always got it right. We've run a program called Raise Resilience over, since COVID started. And have reached something like over 4,000 parents now. And, I sort of always say up front, this is not a parent, this is not a parenting program. This is about recognizing that family life comes in all different shapes and sizes. There's no one perfect, example of a family. Sometimes we get it wrong as a parent who, has worked really hard and really passionate about my role as a parent, but I've got it extremely wrong at sometimes, and then beat myself up about what I should and shouldn't have done with my children and whether I got it right and whether I didn't. My sort of first point out to you, and what I'm going to do in these sessions is sort of share some ideas and then give you some top tips really that certainly I've sort of been thinking about over the time since I've set up Bounce Forward. And the first one would be to just accept that you're not always going to get everything right all the time. We have to accept as parents that our children are going to experience negative emotions. That's part of life. They're going to cry. They're going to be upset. They're going to be angry. They're also going to be excited and happy and joyful, and all of those emotions that they experience as they go through life. And as us as parents, I think our first, often, parents will say, we want to wrap our children up and we don't want them to feel sad or angry, and there's all sorts of ideals that we have around that. And so the first thing that I want to say to you is that we have to sometimes accept that life is messy. It's not always as we expect it, and that's okay. But then once we know that, we have to also then step back and think, okay, so what's our role as parents? How can we really support and enable our children to build resilience, to be able to look after themselves in a way that is going to make a difference? And the very, very first thing that I can share with you is that you matter. You absolutely matter. Your well-being matters. The behaviour that you model matters. It's not just what we say that our children pick up on. It's what we do. It's the behaviour that we model as well. Our children know if we're having a bad time. I often hear parents say, oh, well, I didn't let my children know about that because of whatever. I didn't want them to be upset. But the bottom line is that our children do know, children do notice what's going on for adults. They don't know it exactly in the same way, and there's ways that we can sort of support that, create barriers for them. But one of the key things is thinking about your well-being matters. The behavior that you model matters. The way that you sort of show your children how you respond to the world, how you respond to uncertainty really does matter. So I'm sure that many of you listening and watching this spend your time doing, right? As parents, there are so many different jobs to do. This picture here, this image here just happens to be in the kitchen and cooking. But, look at this mum here, she's on the phone, probably to a work call if she's been at home due to COVID. She's got a little one who's trying to drag the phone off her. She's got an older one who's probably asking her a really important question. She's trying to get dinner going. She's doing, right? The to-do list never stops. What I want you to now think about is how often you are able to just be. And look at the difference between these two images, right? They're both in the kitchen. They're both, you know, parent with two children. But the difference between the two, you know, dad doesn't care about the mess in the kitchen. Dad is just using this as a moment to just be with his children, to laugh and to not worry about what's coming next or what's gone before, but to just be in this moment. So, you know, again, one of the first things, if you think about your well-being matters, how much of your time do you spend doing and how much do you spend just being? Getting back to that heart of who you are and what brings you joy, and not, you know, not worrying about, you know, all of the other stuff, but just being in the moment. Because if we are able to model to our children that being matters, so almost putting being on your to-do list at least once a day, find a nugget of time, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, where you just be, where you're allowed to just, you know, just be in the moment. And if we can model that to our children, we're doing two amazing things. One, we're showing them that we matter, you know, mum and dad matters, carers matter. And also we're modeling behavior that will actually enable and help them to be resilient to uncertainty. We'll be able to help them through situations like COVID-19. And why do I say that? Well, I say that because there are links and connections between well-being and mental illness. We at Bounce Forward get called into a lot of conversations which are headed well-being, but really the conversations are about mental illness. They're about diagnosis. Now, both of these things are connected, but they are separate and individual. And I want to just share 4 main reasons why they are. The first is that we know that there are ways in which you can, you know, that if we look after our well-being, if we teach resilience, if we teach ideas, evidence-based ideas around ways to look after our well-being, it can act as an inoculation to mental illness. We know it's actually where our work at Bounce Forward started, in clinical settings with children, young people who'd been diagnosed with conditions, mental illness conditions, and as an alternative to giving them drugs, we taught them resilience, we taught them well-being habits. So we know that it, you know, and it produced similar and sometimes better results than the drugs. I'm not saying, by the way, that one is better than the other. I'm just giving it as an example. So we know that it can help as an inoculation. We also know that it's random. Mental illness can be random in the same way that physical illness is random. So yes, there's a certain amount of stuff that we know around indicators that help us understand which people are more prone to mental illness than others. And so we know some of that. And even with all of that, that understanding, mental illness is also random, just can come out of the blue. So my desire is always, why wait until we've got a diagnosis to start thinking about our well-being? Our well-being shouldn't be an afterthought. Our well-being should be something that we nurture and develop in our children from the earliest possible age, starting with ourselves, because we matter. The third area is that the two can coexist. Now, you know, it's really important that if we don't believe this, if we don't believe that the two can coexist absolutely together, we're basically saying to anybody who has a diagnosis of a mental illness condition that you can never feel good and function well, that well-being doesn't matter to you, that you just need to hand your well-being over to the experts and, you know, whatever. And that's just not true. Because even for those of you that are listening that have a diagnosis, you will know that a lot of your care and a lot of what you do also comes from the things that you choose to do, the habits that you create for yourself, in addition to the you know, the therapy or to the external support that you might get and all of those other things. But actually there are a lot of things that you do, you know, around your well-being that's really important. In terms of the general populations of particularly children of young people, most children and young people do not have a diagnosis of a mental illness condition. And I worry, this is Lucy Bailey speaking, this is not necessarily, you know, an official response. I worry as an individual that we give messages to young people that says any type of stress and anxiety is an illness, it's a medical condition. And I worry about that. I worry about that in terms of the data that we're seeing. because what I worry about is that because in the most general populations of children and young people, yes, they may be suffering higher levels of anxiety. In COVID-19, we are all experiencing high levels of stress and anxiety because we're dealing with something for the first time, right? So that will happen for our children as well. But what I worry about around that data that's producing around what stress and anxiety means is that the kids that do have a diagnosis, it's harder for them to get into the services and the support that they need because the system's clogged up really with young people that are just having a stressful period. You know, our education system encourages our children to take 11, 12 GCSEs all in a period of time. That period is going to be an extremely stressful period for the children themselves, for the schools, for the parents that are supporting them, but that isn't a diagnosis. So, you know, two key things for me. One, it's really important that we give a really clear understanding to young people and our children around the difference between looking after our well-being, which is one thing, and then what's normal for us, what's going on for us, and when we should expect to feel more stressed or more anxious, or, you know, because of what's going on in the real world, and the difference between when our brain is ill and we have a mental illness. If they understand that, one, I think they deal with their anxiety and stress better, and two, it means we have a system where the kids that really need it get the support that they need. And by the way, I'm just going to pause. I'm an absolute advocate and champion for reducing stigma around mental illness. I believe that, you know, we've made such progress over the last sort of 10, 15 years around what mental illness is and well-being. And, you know, so I'm not disregarding any of that when I talk about, you know, my worry around the data. What I'm really talking about is making sure that we get the help that's needed to the right people and the right messages to the rest, the general populations, about what we can do to look after our well-being so that we prevent as much as possible going towards mental illness. And then when we do have a mental illness diagnosis, if that happens, we also know how to look after ourselves as part of the bit that we need to do for ourselves as well. And the last thing I want to say about the connection, and I know you've got some stuff coming up later on nutrition, but, you know, and this is the sort of most recent research really around, you know, we know that if we look after our mental health, it improves our physical health. And we know if we look after our physical health, it's going to improve our mental health. The two, you know, so I'm going to talk to you mainly in this session about psychological well-being, but physical well-being matters as well. Exercise, nutrition, sleep, all of that stuff matters. And as I say, I know you've got a wonderful session coming up later on nutrition, which I'm sure they will talk to. You know, you'll hear more then. So I wanted to start really by saying that emotions matter, right? Ridiculously common sense thing to say. We are all feeling things all of the time. If I was to stop and ask you now to think, what emotion are you feeling right now? What are you experiencing? What word would you use to describe the emotion that you were experiencing right now? For most of us and for most people, we don't think about it. You know, but all emotions are telling us something. There is no such thing as a bad emotion. We have positive and negative emotions. We have helpful and unhelpful strength of emotion. You know, if we are overexcited, it can be unhelpful if we need to get to sleep. If we're overly angry, we can behave in a way where it's, you know, it's unhelpful to the situation because we might overreact to it. But there is no such thing as a good and bad emotion. For me, the youngest possible age that we can help young people, our children, recognize the emotions that they're experiencing, helping them think about the words that we use around emotions, thinking about what's going on in the body when they are experiencing certain emotions, because the way that we experience emotions are different for different people. So they get to know what's normal and what's usual for them, the better. Creating emotional intelligence from the earliest possible age, not talking about bad emotions and trying to sort of stop them experience, but actually talking about them, you know, in terms of positive and negative and helpful and unhelpful. Because for me, that's really where we develop empathy, which is essential, absolutely essential, that we teach our children what we mean by empathy. empathy means to feel with people, to understand what it feels like to experience a certain emotion. And if we can create empathy and build empathy in our children, then compassion comes alongside it. And for me, the biggest part for you as parents, or message to parents, is first of all, we have to be compassionate to ourselves, right? We have to look after ourselves. We have to extend the compassion that we might give out to other people first to ourselves, because my experience of working with parents is that we are way too hard on ourselves. You know, we beat ourselves up way too much about what we get right and what we get wrong. And so extending that compassion to ourselves first. So emotions matter. And again, I know you've got a session coming up this afternoon, really focusing on the value of laughter. So I'm not going to dwell here too much, but the role of positive emotion is so important. The brain literally, you know, it improves in so many different ways when we are experiencing positive emotion. Our intellectual resources are improved. We're better problem solvers when we're experiencing positive emotion. We can take on new information. We can think more creatively and more laterally. So what does that tell us? That tells us when I need to draw on my intellectual resources, doing something which puts me in a positive, you know, allows me to experience positive emotion before I do it, is a good thing to do. You know, it's actually a resilient response to be able to do that. So, you know, before you walk into that, if your children are going into a test or exam, tell them to do something which makes them laugh out loud before they do that. Rather than revising for the last 5 minutes, do something which really, you know, fills them with positive emotion. We know that it improves our physical resources. I mean, there's evidence to suggest that people that experience more positive emotion live longer. They have better coordination, better strength, better cardiovascular health. It matters in terms of our physical health if we are experiencing positive emotion. Our social resources are improved. We're social animals, right? And so, you know, our human connections matter. If we experience positive emotion, we're more likely to create new friends. We're more likely to sustain and strengthen the relationships that we have. We're better at relationships when we experience more positive emotion. And finally, our physical resources. So, you know, we are able to be more goal orientated. Our psychological resources, we're more able to sort of identify goals, be more likely to stay with them, to persevere with those goals, much more likely to be resilient and to be able to be optimistic. So, you know, I hope for those of you that, you know, that are around for the rest of the day, get to join the session that you've got coming up this afternoon, which I think is going to extend on this idea. But key for me is know what enables you to experience positive emotion. What is it that enables you to feel carefree, to feel happy, to feel content, to feel calm, to feel relaxed? What are those things that enable you to, because then you can do more of them. You can plan them into your day. You can put them onto your to-do list, and they can help you in those being moments. And you can then model to your children that positive emotion matters. It's actually a strategy that you can use for stressful situations, for improving your physical health, and, you know, and all of the things that I've just spoken about. So I wanted to draw down into resilience, really, because our approach at Bounce Forward to good mental fitness, good mental health, is through the eyes of resilience, really, the science of resilience. Resilience is a big word, right? It's, you know, it's sort of almost a concept in a way, isn't it? And I hear the word, you know, bandied about, you know, a lot. And again, I'm not disrespecting that. It's really good that we use it, but it's sort of a word that's back on it's a buzzword again. It's back on the agenda. And I think particularly when we've gone through something like COVID, where, you know, we're talking about our resilience, you know, to it sort of collectively, individually, economically, you know, so this word comes around a lot. What I wanted to do is to just share the key characteristics, really, of what the research tells us around resilience, and particularly resilience for children and young people. The first is resilience is about the ability to be able to think flexibly and realistically. That means recognizing that there is a link between what we think and how we feel and how we behave. and that I'm flexible and realistic thinking is the idea that we can learn from mistakes, that failure is a learning opportunity. You know, it's that sense that we're not always going to get everything right all the time. We can't always be perfect. Resilience is about that flexibility of recognizing that it's not about perfection. It's about recognizing that, you know, when I fail, it's a learning opportunity. What can I learn from it to enable me to move forward? Resilience is, yes, about bouncing back, definitely trying to get back to where we were when we got sidelined or sidetracked by whatever it is that we're faced with. But it's also about moving forward. It's also sometimes about moving sideways. I wholeheartedly believe that we do not want to get completely back to where we were before COVID-19. There are certain things that I've learned during this huge uncertainty that I don't want to leave behind, that I want to take with me beyond COVID. So it's not about me getting back to where I was before COVID happened. It's actually thinking about what have I learned from this situation, about myself, about other people, about the situation. What of that can I take forward that's going to really help me going forward? And for us at Bounce Forward, it's always about looking forward. So again, I'm not suggesting that sometimes looking back is not helpful, but always with the view is what do I want to do next? I almost think that it's not what happens that matters as much, it's what we do next that really makes the difference. And so for us, it's also about optimism. If you've got a choice, you may as well take the optimistic one. Yes, it needs to be wedded to reality. This is not about suggesting that this is not about positive thinking. This is not turning every negative situation into a positive one. Optimism is a choice. Optimism is the ability to be able to recognize that my environment is difficult and tough, but I'm making a choice to pay attention to the one or two things that are good in this situation. Or I'm making a choice to pay attention to the one or two things that I can do something about in this situation. Optimism, wedded to reality, is a choice. And if we have it, and mostly we do, pretty much any situation we are landed with, even really difficult ones, we have a choice to take the pessimistic view or the optimistic one. And my advice to you and to your children is to choose optimism, because optimism is much more likely to make you want to take a step forward, much more enabling. Pessimism is much more likely to want us to give up and stop. So if we have a choice, and we mostly do, take the optimistic one. Very, very different to positive thinking, though. It's about a choice of paying attention to the reality, but making a decision to choose to notice the things that are good, that we can be grateful for, that we have control over. Another key characteristics of resilience is this ability to reach out and to connect. Now, I do just want to pause here, because for me, connection is both the easiest thing to do, right? Communicating with other people. We all know that a problem shared is a problem halved. But reaching out, we have to know the words. We have to be able to understand ourselves, you know, what's going on for us, and we need the words to be able to articulate and explain them. So we shouldn't just expect that our children are able to tell us what's going on, because they might not be able to form the words to be able to do it. So for me, reaching out is essential, and it's really important and a key ingredient of resilience. But we have to really help people work out the words that they can use and give them the safety and the boundaries to be able to do that. So easy on the one hand, but always not necessarily easy. Self-regulation, and this also is about that ability to be able to control our impulses, control that impulse, you know, that to want to react to a situation, to be able to take a breath, to just stop and calm down. And it's also recognizing that there is benefit in delaying gratification. Waiting works. Right, I know we don't want to wait for anything. I know at the moment, you know, everything we get really quickly. But actually, self-regulation is also recognizing that there is benefits of delaying our gratification. Really good lesson for our children to learn from a really young age. Self-awareness, I've already talked about this, but this really, knowing what's normal for me, knowing that, what emotions that I'm experiencing, creating that emotional intelligence, are really good ways of then knowing what's not normal for me, right? And really helping to develop that sense of being able to form the words and to be able to describe to people what's going on for you. And that's self-awareness for me is always wedded to compassion. It's about self, and helping us understand that we matter in the context of compassion and understanding and respect for other people. And the final element is self-efficacy. So this takes a little while to explain, really, but I suppose self-efficacy in its simplest form is the self-belief that I can be effective. And that self-belief is based on evidence. It's based on something that I've learnt, something that I've seen somebody else a bit like me do, something that I know that I'm physically able to and calm enough to be able to do, and something that I'm able to tell somebody else about. Self-efficacy is very different to self-esteem. One, because you can have way too much self-esteem. Right, we all know people that have got way too much self-esteem. You can't have too much self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is that, I always do, it's almost like it's that sort of sense of self that I can be effective in these situations. It is, as I say, it's really tangible. I can get hold of it. We can teach it, we can measure it, and we can master it. Nobody can have too much self-efficacy. For people that are interested in any of or more of this, please do drop us a line at Bounce Forward. We'd love to talk to you in more detail about it. If you're interested in research, Anne Maston is a really good place to have a look at where the research sits around resilience. But I wanted to sort of bring it to life a little bit for you, really, in the last 10 minutes. So adversity happens to us, right? I know this particular adversity hasn't been happening to us in quite the same way over the last year. Perhaps it's one of the things that we hope for, being stuck in a traffic jam again. I don't, by the way. But when adversity happens, some of us might, honk our horn, get angry, and honk our horn, sit there, getting angry and honking our horn. Other of us will, take it as a moment to relax, turn on the tunes, listen and, sing one of our favourite songs. And other of us will sit there worrying about the implications of being stuck in that traffic jam. Three very, very different responses to the same adversity, the same situation. Now, behavioural psychologists used to say stimuli response. Something happens, we're stuck in a traffic jam, and it leads to me feeling a certain way and behaving a certain way, right? Stuck in the traffic jam, it makes me feel angry, so I honk my horn. But over time, behavioural psychology said, well, hold on a minute, that can't be true, because I can put three people in exactly the same situation and they are going to feel differently and they're going to behave differently. So Albert Ellis and his colleagues came up with this idea of beliefs. It's the beliefs we have in the moment of the activating event. As we're stuck there in that traffic jam, we have these beliefs that pop into our head that tell us about the causes of the traffic jam, all the implications of the traffic jam. And it's those beliefs that we have in the moment that lead to how we feel and how we behave. So when somebody says, oh, I got stuck in this traffic jam and it made me feel angry, that's not completely true. What led to them feeling angry was a set of beliefs that they had, a set of thoughts that they had in that moment that told them what the causes of being stuck in that traffic jam were. And that's what led to them feeling angry. Let me just extend on this a little bit, right? So let's imagine for a minute that, that I'm stuck in this traffic jam and I'm going to honk my horn. I might think in that moment, some idiot's been driving irresponsibly, or they're doing more roadworks for unnecessary reasons on this road. There's way too many cars on the road, right? That might be some beliefs that I might have that would lead to me feeling angry. If I'm going to feel chilled, I might think, nothing I can do about this. Being's important. I'm going to turn on my favourite tune and I'm going to sing like nobody's listening because they aren't, right? That could be some beliefs that I might have if I'm going to feel chilled and turn on the tunes. If I'm going to feel anxious and literally sit there clutching my head, I might think I'm going to be late, and then I'm going to let people down. If I let people down, they're not going to trust me. If they don't trust me, I'm not going to get a promotion. If I don't get a promotion, before I know it, I'm catastrophizing all of the possible implications of being stuck in this traffic jam. Things that haven't even happened yet, but are leading to an increase. These, all, this sort of catastrophizing in my head leads to this sense of over anxiety and stress. 3 very, very different responses to the same situation. I'm going to let you into this ABC to resilient thinking is absolutely essential for the ability to develop flexible and accurate thinking, flexible and realistic thinking. It's really simple. When we don't like the way we are feeling and the way we're behaving, right? So, we're sitting there angry, honking our horn, completely unhelpful to me. I'm stuck in the traffic jam. It might release a bit of tension for me, so it might be helpful in that way, but overall, unhelpful. All I do is I separate out the A from the B from the C. The A is the activating event, the situation. Who, what, where, when. It's Friday afternoon. I'm stuck on the M25. I need to be somewhere at 3:30 and I'm stuck in a traffic jam, right? Facts of the situation. The B are the beliefs. So I have to tune in and listen. What am I thinking in that moment? Not what I think later when I'm all rational and I'm at home, but actually what are the thoughts that are popped into my head right then and there, right? And then the C is the consequence. It's both how I'm feeling, the emotion that I'm experiencing right now, and how I behave. So do I feel angry and honk my horn? Do I feel chilled and turn on my favourite tune? Do I feel anxious and literally sit there clutching my head, right? This simple yet really powerful model, this ABC, is really, really useful to enable to think about resilient thinking, flexible and realistic thinking. Why does this matter? So if you think then that it's our beliefs that lead to how we feel and how we behave, and if I don't like how I'm feeling and how I'm behaving, then my thoughts, maybe I can change them, right? From a psychological perspective, every single one of us has habits of thinking. Every single one of us uses our past experience to explain causes of events. Every single one of us is able to anticipate the future. We would literally not put one foot in front of the other unless we were able to process information really, really efficiently. Think about, let's stay with the driving analogy. For those of you that drive, when we first learn to drive, we have to work really hard psychologically to be able to know all of the different things, the steering wheel, the pedals, what's going on behind, to the side, where the gears, what gears go, where, all of that. Now, I bet there are, for those of you that have been driving a long time, you can drive from A to B and sometimes not even really be conscious that you've done that trip from A to B, right? Your brain is working so efficiently, it knows those. It's created shortcuts to know, where the gears are, the pedals are, and all of that really, really effectively, that you no longer have to put any psychological resource into driving from A to B. You do it quite naturally. So on the one hand, these habits of thinking that we have mean that we work really, really efficiently, that we're able to, as I say, to explain causes of events, to anticipate what might be coming. On the opposite to that, our brain makes mistakes. With the work that we do with schools and the curriculums that we provide into schools, we help students, young children, young people understand this by talking about gremlins. We have gremlins in our thinking. I want to introduce you to some of these gremlins, right? We have the negativity gremlin, who only ever sees the negative in the situation, just cannot see the good in anything. We have the me gremlin, who all of the beliefs are about, I'm the cause of this situation, it's my fault, or I'm responsible, I'm fully responsible for this situation. So all of my beliefs about being stuck in that traffic jam would be, this is my fault, I took the wrong road, I shouldn't have come on this journey, I left too late. Then we have the them gremlin, and the them gremlin only sees everybody else's thought, right? So the traffic jam is nothing to do with me. It's the people that are doing the road works. It's that idiot driver who, you know, was driving irresponsibly and has caused an accident. It's because there's too many cars on the road. Nothing to do with me at all. We have the always gremlin. And the always gremlin believes that whatever has happened is going to last forever. It's never going to change. It's just the way it is. It's always going to be like this. I pause and pose a question. What things are forever? Genuinely, what things are forever? Not many things. When you truly think about it, what things last forever? Most things can last a period of time, maybe a week, maybe a month, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, right? Who thought COVID was going to go on? So as soon as you hear these beliefs in yourself, oh, it's never going to change, it's always like this, never, that permanent sense to them, you straight away know there's a gremlin there. There's a habit of thinking that's not completely true, because not many things last forever. Then we have the catastrophizing gremlin, and this is that gremlin when, they just catastrophize everything, snowball these thoughts out of our, we take one thing and we make it get bigger and bigger and bigger in our mind. I'm stuck in a traffic jam. I'm going to be late. I'm going to let people down. If I let people down, they're not going to try. Before I know it, I'm unemployed and, can't pay my rent. And the last gremlin that we have is the truth gremlin. This is when we have a set of beliefs that says, I'm right. My beliefs are not my perspective, they are truth. And all human beings do it. We all have truths that we believe are right. You all have things that you believe are true. This truth gremlin, it's almost like what we do as human beings is we only see the evidence that supports the way that we believe to be true. We let that sink in, and anything that might suggest that we might not be true, we no, but, we bat it away. These guys are just some common gremlins in our thinking. The idea of what's the point of using this? So the idea is to think about, this is about, I don't like the way that I am feeling and the way that I am behaving. So I can ABC the situation. I can separate out what's happened from my beliefs about the situation and the way that I feel and behave. And I get my beliefs on the table, if you like, and I can start to think about, are they accurate? Is it a completely true picture of what's happening? What might I have missed? Because the aim is about being able to problem solve. The aim is about being able to take control of how I'm feeling and how I'm behaving. And the goal is about making sure that I'm open and curious to different perspectives. These ideals are things, if we want to teach our children how to be resilient, help them think about their B's, their beliefs, and help them see how there might be a link between what they think and how they feel and how they behave. Nurture those ideas. First of all, start with yourself. In the last minute of this session, I just want to share with you my top tips for good habits for nurturing resilience in yourself and your children. The first would be spend time being. Put being on the to-do list. The second would be to value positive emotion. Don't think of positive emotion as a nice to do. Think about it as a strategy for life. Think about modeling that to your children. Think about how you can notice the good things. Develop that muscle in yourself and your children to notice the good things in difficult situations, right? So when difficult things happen, how can you encourage and nurture and support them to think about the good things? Talk more about the B's, the perspective, the different views that people can have, the different ways of seeing things. Don't do it in the heat of the moment when everything, do it when everything's calm, but use questions to help you and help them think about, questions like, what does that mean to you? What bothers you most about that? What's the most important part of that for you? These questions, and notice that I'm saying what and not why. Why makes me defend? Why does that bother me? What bothers you most about that enables me, it pushes me back in, helps me think about what's really going on for me. These questions can really help encourage, nurture the idea of understanding what's going on for me, what I'm thinking, what I believe to be true. Use the ABC to start to notice patterns and start to look for evidence to notice and recognize possible gremlins. We all have them, right? But the goal is to be able to working towards these ideals around resilience, around that ability to be able to think flexibly and realistically. And I wanted to leave you with our mantra really at Bounce Forward, that resilience is not about avoiding the storm. We can't avoid COVID. None of us can expect our children never to deal with uncertainty or to face uncertainty or to fail. That's just not life. Life is tough, right? Resilience is about really learning to dance in the rain, really learning to think about how I can deal with uncertainty in a way which is going to enable me to take control, which is going to enable me to thrive. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very, very much for inviting me. And most importantly, look after yourselves and each other. Thank you very much.